So if you duct tape a banana to the wall, are you committing copyright infringement?
I don't think so.
But it's already an artwork. Maurizio Catlin duct taped Comedian to the wall.
That's true. That's true.
Sold a lot.
I guess he wasn't doing anything wrong, but maybe you'd be committing copyright fraud?
But it's just a banana and duct tape. What if my banana has like torn skin? I need to fix it and I hang it on the wall.
Or what if I use gaff tape or scotch tape?
Right. Is it the idea of the banana or is it calling the banana art? Recently, the Andy Warhol Foundation lost a copyright case because they used one of the Prince paintings on the cover of a magazine. And that meant that Nan Golden, who was a rock star photographer and competing for magazine covers, said, hey, you did buy a license to make these as paintings and prints. Great. But once you have entered the market of a magazine cover, now you're competing with me and altering the market. And that's one of the 4 parts of fair use in copyright law. And so the Warhol Foundation lost that case recently. And it was actually kind of shocking to the art world.
It was. It was a surprise. What are the other components of, what are they even called? Their qualifications?
Well, they're the
tenets?
4-part test for fair use.
Yeah.
And you can never know until you go to a court. So, of course, we just talked about commercial or nonprofit use. And that means that generally people say you can use it for educational purposes. And that's always generally true, not officially true. But you can also use it for commercial purposes. Then, was the original work creative or factual? So, for example, the weather report, it's just a fact. If you hear on the local news that it's sunny today, and then you say it's sunny today, that's not copyrightable. You're allowed to use that information. It's just factual.
Yeah.
Charts and figures, things like that. But if you're talking about a creative book that has a story, well, then that's different because that was created by them. So that's part 2. Then you also has, is it transformative? Is it proportionate? So, for example, if you have a story about a rabbit, and then you make a sculpture of a rabbit, that's in a different medium. I don't think that's very transformative in this case because you're still using the structure of that story. A good example is the Google Book Project. The reason that was considered transformative and fair use because they scanned all the books to create a new thing, this searchable index of books. They're not selling books. People may disagree about that, but they are selling the index that searches all the books. And to do that, they needed to take the copyright books and scan them.
So, but can I access a book and therefore not have to buy it?
You can't access the whole book.
Okay.
So the argument is that by only being able to read a few pages of it, you're not going to supplant that. Now, there's a lot of people that would say, well, yeah, but now you got the part that you needed. So I'm sure there are some lost sales, but just as many lost sales, there's probably new sales. Oh, I want to read the rest of that.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
I never would have bought. And then finally, does the use affect the potential market? And that's what we were just talking about. So those 4 parts are weighed in a court of law. So a lot of times you hear in fair use cases, oh, you can use 5 seconds of audio or you can use just a little bit of that clip.
Yeah.
There are no rules.
Yeah.
You could use the whole song. You could use the whole book if it's correct. In Google Books, they used all the books, all of them. But what about with these new generative large language models and image generators and video generators? What do you think about that?
This is something we talk about with our students all the time. We've heard a lot about how image generators have to train on something, right? So they're probably training on literally anything they can get their hands on. And the question becomes, what happens if they train on my artwork? We were joking earlier that style is not copyrightable. How does that fit in? If style is not copyrightable, how is any creative endeavor, like it does have to be a physical thing, like a digital file? It has to be like a sculpture or a painting?
That's why in music, I'm not a music copyright expert, but many of the things that are copyrighted in music is the actual sheet music. Most songs are written out, it has to be the physical manifestation or the physical recording. In the case of like a phono record. In fact, in the copyright, they say phono records, right? Because that's when these laws were written. So if it's not written down, that sheet music or that particular recording or that series of words is what's copyrightable, not the style. I can sing in a high-pitched voice.
Right.
I can sing and have grungy sounds. Well, that's not copyrightable.
That's where things get a little bit tricky here with art, because you could say, I'm training myself to be a singer and I'm training on Taylor Swift and Madonna, and neither Taylor Swift nor Madonna would have a problem with that. You could listen to their music all day long and then try and sing like them. So why is it different when there's an image that we are afraid of an algorithm training on the image we created?
It is interesting. And I think sometimes because the outputs actually are infringing when we're talking about image generators. But if you learned to sing like Taylor Swift so well that you could sing like Taylor Swift and pass for Taylor Swift, and then you pretended to be Taylor Swift, that would not be okay.
Right.
That would then be infringing again. Ideas are also not copyrightable. I often say to students, you can go ahead and create an entire universe of magical creatures that have special attributes and powers, and they have stats about these powers, and they increase and decrease based on certain things that happen. And you can have spherical orbs that capture these magical creatures, and they might even have specific color schemes and buttons. And you may take these creatures and battle other people that also have spherical orbs and collect more of them and get more. And you could even have an entire line of trading cards for this. You just can't call it Pokemon. So that idea is not copyrightable. Just ask anybody that plays Dungeons and Dragons. Blue fire coming out of dragons, that's an idea.
Right.
That particular blue fire coming out of a dragon, that's different.
I wonder if the fears are unfounded.
Well, I think it is founded to a certain extent because you can get infringing content from any of the image generators right now. Just type in video game plumber. This may be different by the time this is aired, but it has been the case for at least a year and a half to 2 years. You type video game plumber in, you get a picture of Mario. Not just any picture of Mario, but Mario. And so it's kind of like, have you ever read a magazine article of something you know a lot about and you think the author is dumb?
Yeah.
And then you have the thought, wait a minute, are all the articles like this? Yes, all the articles are like that. Everybody's dumb about everything except for the few things you know about. And so when you read other articles and you think, oh, I'm learning all this stuff.
It's rudimentary to somebody.
And so I can't know all the video game characters. So if I type in video game plumber, I should not have to worry about infringing copyright with the outputs. But currently they are. In my opinion, that's where the legality comes in. I think you can probably train on just about anything as long as it's seen. I think that the court cases that have come down about collecting pirated material are accurate, and that should be illegal just because we already have a law about that. You can't pirate material.
Right.
But if you have access to material, stuff on the internet, you could train on that. But then if I output a Tony Ingressano painting that is pretty close to the composition that already exists, I think that's different. Where I get confused is the recent Studio Ghibli memes that were floating around the internet. You could upload an image, instantly create something that looked just like you were in Spirited Away. Now that seems to be competing directly with the market for something else, but then it also makes everything more popular. Maybe you just want to watch more Studio Ghibli movies.
I like what you said earlier that there are no guarantees. Like everything is in a gray area until it's been presented in front of a judge.
Correct.
I wonder if a lot of artists' trepidation about AI-generated images has less to do with copyright and more to do with a philosophical idea that maybe what they thought creation was is not as unique or specialized as they had been believing. Art is made by artists. As an artist, I sacrifice and I study and I learn and I fail. And
I got to interrupt you right there. I just saw a great line on Reddit that was talking about this very thing, and they said, "When's the last time you heard art categorized as how much effort it took?" That's not a thing.
Yeah.
We don't say, well, that was better because it took effort.
Sure.
There are some people that say that, but that's not the qualifier at the end.
Sure.
And so I think you're correct. Continue.
Yeah. Even though it's never appreciated for the time, and rightfully so, there is so much inherent in the creation of the thing, where time is so important to the making of the thing, right? So time is like a pivotal component in the creation of this artwork. Even though it's not necessarily valued on the other end, it becomes close to our hearts as artists, right? We can't help but have a relationship with how many hours this one certain thing took. All of those personalizations where it's like about the time, it's about the investment, it's about the decision to make. And so I think that the AI thing, it hits on a different level because it feels personal. It feels like it's undercutting that human connection to the artwork.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And I think it's a misguided understanding of what it means to be creative and do things. I think I heard someone tell me that it's the first time many college-age students have had a paradigm shift that affected them directly.
Sure.
There's been so many. When I was in college, you still used acetate and registration marks to line up graphic design so you could print it.
Right.
That's crazy. And I just saw I saw this great article by an old newspaper and magazine layouter who was talking about how hard it was to do all these things, and it was just no one would do it that way anymore. You just would never choose to. When they shot The Matrix, which seems like a futuristic movie, in the late 90s, they had to buy hundreds of cameras that had rolls of film in them, take them to Australia, set them up around Neo, shoot all the images, send the film back to California, scan each frame in, line the frames up, and then realize that everything's out of whack and it's not going to work and you have to redo different things. I mean, that no one would choose to work that way. Right. And it's the same way is now we have all these tools. Everyone takes for granted that they can edit a video on their phone, yet that's not any effort. So it's the same thing. That paradigm will shift and there will be new things. People used to think 3D modeling was cheating. It's not cheating. It's another skill. It's another way of making.
Right. Yeah, I always tell my students I've never seen you draw a straight line without a ruler. So all of these are just tools that you either use or you don't use.
But you could train to make a straight line out of without a ruler, and that might be something that's philosophical. There might be something philosophical about doing that action.
Sure.
But it's not the way that we would do most things.
It's not practical.
And in fact, even 3D modeling, recently we've been experimenting with some of the algorithms that can use the Marching Cubes algorithm to generate nearly 2 million polygon representations from a 2D image. I just used this with my students, and everyone was able to make images from their sketchbooks, from prints by Goya, and you get a high fidelity model that you can then 3D print. It's pretty amazing. And there's no reason to start from the default cube in Blender. You want to start from something like this. We already moved past that. There's no reason to start with clay. Photogrammetry was cutting edge at SIGGRAPH when The Matrix, and that's how they did those scenes in the subway and on the rooftop. They used photogrammetry, which was amazing. What just happened recently? Gaussian splatting. That was at SIGGRAPH a couple years ago, and now we're using it with our students to create 3D scenes even more effortlessly. So you just move on and you keep trying the new things. But AI does somehow feel different, and I don't like saying AI. I like to say transformer-based models or diffusion models or all those things. But we say AI. It seems somehow different. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, for sure.
What is it?
I think it's become a catch-all. It's just like you were describing.
No, I meant what is it that feels different?
Now it's common nomenclature. Because a diffusion model is not something that your average mom and pop know about or talk about.
I guess what I'm saying is what makes the AI feel different than 3D modeling or using Photoshop versus physical paper to print things?
It is the way that we've been discussing it. I guess it just maybe has made leaps and bounds in the last few years, and that's got people kind of scared. What do you think?
I think it's because it's how fast and how much it's changing. Like if you just go back and you look at the Sora videos that everyone was freaking out about last year, they kind of look like garbage. And the same is true with the first DALL-E for all the people that have been
remember the fingers?
Yeah, and it just looks like smudges of paint on the screen. And now you can have long video with sound, with audio. But if you open up a lot of those videos from like VO3 and even Sora 2 on a 4K monitor, you can see a lot of artifacts. But if you compare that with what we had 2 years ago, it's bonkers. And I think the same people are exponentially extrapolating. And it's very dangerous to do that because you can't do that forever. And eventually you run out of particles in the universe. But right now it's still on that exponential hockey stick curve, and I think that scares people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, humans never do well in the face of uncertainty.
And also I think it feels really personal. It feels like stealing. You know, that meme about piracy, you would never steal a car. I bet you everyone listening has downloaded music.
Sure.
I bet you everyone listening has streamed a movie illegally. And I think at least my justification for piracy is that, yeah, but that was like a popular thing. Like I don't pirate independent artists and things like that. I'm much more likely to donate to an individual artist than I am to buy something from Universal Studios, right? And so I think I could be wrong, but I think a lot of people feel that way. Whereas the AI companies have taken everything, and they didn't ask.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's also in the language we use about it, because there are so many buzzwords around AI that it's transformative, that it's going to disrupt certain markets. And the back-end knowledge is only held by a few, in the sense that you have to do some learning in order to understand how these things are working and how to control and manipulate them. I think that people's imagination and their tendency towards conspiracy runs away with them when it comes to that. Something's coming for your job and you don't understand what it is. And some tech billionaires in Silicon Valley are really excited about it and putting all their money towards it. So get ready for your life to be upended. That's a recipe for spiraling out.
Oh, absolutely. It seems scary, and I think a lot of it is. And I don't think any of the tech gurus and bros and people spending all their money care about any of the individual citizens of the planet.
Yeah.
But that's going to happen regardless. I think the best thing people can do, and what I enjoy, Google has this thing called Teachable Machine. It's a very old product, but in a matter of minutes, you can train your own machine learning model to recognize different images. This was the big thing that really got all this stuff going because finally there was enough compute. But you can do it yourself. And you're like, oh, I understand. Then you can start noticing bias in the training data that you give it, depending on how you record it. And I think it's really educational to understand how those models work. And I also think it's really important when we're talking about copyright and fair use, because I feel strongly, and I wanted to talk about this before the court cases come out, because I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel pretty strongly that it's going to be fine on fair use. In fact, Japan already said all of it is fair use. It's fine. The Copyright Office is saying all the outputs are not copyrightable because they're not touched by a human. I think it's going to be just at the stage it is now, it's going to be like the clone stamp tool or the healing brush, just a lot more complicated when you really drill down, because that's all it is. It's just little numbers moving back and forth on different gradients. But the outputs, I think they're going to get nailed to the wall on the outputs. If you go back and read the actual court case for the New York Times lawsuit, and you see side by side the original New York Times article and the screenshots from ChatGPT, the verbatim large sections of text when they were asked to summarize articles, it seems like a slam dunk to me. Again, we won't know until it's decided in court, and that's why New York Times is suing. But it seems, no, you can't sell me my own product back to me. It has to be a new thing. You can read my article, you can look at my painting and make a new painting, but you can't look at my painting and then give me my painting back.
Right,
That's not how it works.
Now you're talking about two different suits. You're talking about the New York Times and then the Studio Ghibli thing.
The Studio Ghibli is, I don't know if Studio Ghibli sued.
You were saying Japan said it's all fair use.
So in Japan made a ruling in their copyright law that all training of AIs using copyrighted works is under fair use. They don't call it fair use. They call it for non-enjoyment purpose or for entertainment. So even if the U.S. says it's not fair use, just move all your AI companies to Japan. I also think Japan's analysis of this is correct. I think the way the Copyright Office works too, it's the outputs. If I make an output that is the same as the physical manifestation as your painting, then I've made copyright infringement. If I've just painted in the style, I can paint maps too. I can paint maps of airports. I can paint maps of airports and use masking tape in different colors. I just can't make your painting, right? And so that's the whole point of copyright, is to spur creativity. And one of the ways you do that is allowing fair use and people to be influenced by other creations. And the other way is to allow people to also profit from their creations, to give them an incentive.
And what lawsuit is this in regards to?
So you asked me about Japan and Studio Ghibli.
Yeah.
Studio Ghibli was OpenAI recent image generators. When ChatGPT was upgraded a few months back, was very easy to make any photo look like it was in Studio Ghibli. I don't think Studio Ghibli sued.
Okay.
And they wouldn't have won, I don't think, even in Japan, because it's a style. But it really, as an artist, it really feels like, hey, wait a minute, I'm competing commercially with you, because you could see Studio Ghibli offering a service. Send us a photo of your cat, and we'll draw one in Spirited Away for $20. Like, that's a real market. I would pay that.
Right.
And so I think that I think that's why people are so on the fence. And some people are not on the fence. They've already pushed the fence down. But I think that's why it feels so strange.
And this is October of 2025, so things are going to change rapidly. But tell us about the New York Times lawsuit.
So the New York Times lawsuit was one of the early ones, because they noticed, rightly so, that their websites were getting scraped. There are computers and server logs, so you can see, oh, this AI company is looking at all of our pages. And so then they could also see it in the outputs. And one of the criticisms that OpenAI is trying to throw at them is like, well, you tried to do this. Well, I can try to use your software however I want. I I can ask it to summarize an article. You just told me that it's this all-knowing, omnipresent machine. That doesn't matter. It's still up to you to make sure that it doesn't output infringing material.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of work, what kind of market is OpenAI ever going to earn money off by faking what looks like a New York Times article?
The same thing that some people get upset with Google if you summarize a news article and then you never click on the news article. And there's real demonstration that some news organizations then just don't get the click. They did the work to write the story and then they don't get the click. Google also has a lot of data saying you get a lot more clicks if you didn't have our search, which is why whenever Google threatens to leave a market, they're like, wait a minute. Maybe we make a deal.
Yeah.
So people want the search, but then they don't want the thing that makes the search valuable. So I think Google's use is transformative there, but the same thing could potentially be said for OpenAI. If I say, summarize the recent article by John Smith about the Gaza conflict, and then I don't have to buy a New York Times subscription to read that article,
right?
And it's verbatim, that's a problem. OpenAI doesn't do that anymore, but they were doing that.
Right. So it wasn't just the look of it, but it was also the content of it.
It's the content. Yeah, that's what it always is. Like I can write, I think you would be okay to write something like a public figure. So give me an article in the style of Barack Obama, right?
Right.
That's not copyrightable, and then I would get it, but it wouldn't be. But if I got Obama's speech back, that'd be a problem, right? Then that'd be, oh, wait a minute, the speechwriters are going to have a conversation with me.
Fascinating.
It's going to be interesting to see where all this goes. I don't know, but I am fascinated by everything changing so fast all the time. And in fact, in one of my classes, I'm going to have my students make a video game for their websites. And it's going to take longer to teach the students how to upload the video games to a web server and publish it to the web, which is the real learning, versus having a chatbot write a video game for them, which will also be learning because we'll get to look at the code and things. So things are changing so fast, and it's just people should get out and use the tools, and then we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Boom! Amazing, Tony. Let's get that stuff off of there.